You really, to talk about this evening's course, you need to kind of know what a longitudinal wave is. Remember that most of magnetics are transverse waves. So all of the radios we use, they communicate by taking that high frequency and using the transverse or up and down component of the wave. That would be like this. See how this is going back and forth? That's a transverse wave. However, if you change that transverse up and down component to the longitudinal or compressional component, and the compressional component is like this. See how that's going compressionally up and down like this? Like sound waves are compressional, whereas electromagnetics are mostly transverse. Now, how you convert the up and down component of that wave to a compressional, longitudinal, or scalar, or torsional component, that is the magic. And a metaphor you can use to visualize, to understand how that might work, of course, they tell you, you take the wave, the transverse, and you travel that rotational wave, the transverse component, down a spiral on a cone. Visualize, remember our old metaphor, pine cones kissing noses. So when the transverse component goes down the spiral on the cone, it emerges without having lost inertia, called optimized translation of vorticity, how you define golden spiral if you're teaching hydrodynamics in college. So that translates the inertia from the transverse component down the spiral on the cone to a longitudinal component. So what went in as an up and down wave comes out as a compressional wave. And to make longitudinal waves, an example of this, a famous example, is when we finally almost got done doing the Canzius magic. The Canzius magic is if you got the right radio and you broadcast it to a cold glass of water. Here's a cold glass of water, and the video went viral. The cold glass of water, you light a match, and there it is burning beautifully. And the only thing you had to do to make that water burn, the cold glass of water, was broadcast the right radio. It turns out the frequency Canzius used to do that went viral on the internet, was golden ratio exponent times Planck, the equation on the cover of my book, although Canzius didn't know it at that time. But the tricky part to make that work and save the world with energy, and this was our lab in Melbourne, was when you finally got the radio frequency right, the complex wave, you had to broadcast it down the right antenna to make a longitudinal EMF. And how did that antenna get shaped? It was a spiral on the cone. So do you see why it's so magical? And when Bearden spent half his life talking about the fact that it's longitudinal waves made from phase conjugations that do all the magic healing